I'll have a gymnasium full of like 800 kids or something, and I'll say, hey, I don't want to ruin the romance, but it's not going to work out. Like whoever you're dating right now, y'all going to break up sooner or later. But you know what doesn't break up? That image.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Just a note about today's episode. Due to the nature of the content and discussion, I'm going to recommend that you do a first listen on your own. Some of what gets covered is content that deserves its own time for discussion, and you're going to want to approach it deliberately in conversation with your children. And while you may want to use this episode as a conversation starter, I recommend you hear all of the content first. Thank you. My guest today is the founder of Cyber Safety Cop. As a retired sergeant from the Orange County Sheriff's Department and previous school resource officer, juvenile investigator, and behavioral threat assessor, he is one of the nation's leading law enforcement educators on a variety of topics. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Clay Cranford.
Thank you, Hillary.
So, Clay, you spent a career working with kids and teens. What led you to create your current role as cyber safety cop?
Yeah, it was the best part of my career was working with students. I was a school resource officer in the early 2010s, which was an interesting time to be working with teens because the early 2010s is when children moved their lives online on social media and mobile devices, smartphones. And also at the same time, that's when vaping devices also showed up on school campuses. So it changed things radically. And I noticed that parents were not well equipped to deal with these issues. These are not issues that like we as parents ever had to be concerned about, and no one had to talk to us about. So um, it was a transition time in our kind of culture and our children's culture, and so I was seeing just a lot of really sad, horrible outcomes from some of the decisions that children are making online and who they're connecting with, et cetera. So it all boiled down to two things: a good kid who made a bad choice, and a parent who did not know what was going on. But if they had, they could have done something about it. So I do feel like parents are overwhelmed. I want to give them the tools and resources to make a radical difference in their child's digital world and perhaps make a change in this trajectory of our children's mental health. Our children's mental health is collapsing, anxiety, depression, and I think technology, mobile devices have a lot to do with this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel like I'm every time I've been talking about, I really love the cyber safety cop name. And so I've been telling everybody that I got to talk to you today. And I was telling my sister, I'm gonna be very sad if he doesn't show up in like full robot regalia, which, as a podcast, I can tell you he's not, okay. But that being said, I I really appreciate you coming at this from a very education-based standpoint because I firmly believe education saves lives. And I think that is what you are doing with the work that you are doing. So you kind of traded one role of hero for another.
Hmm.
And yet still doesn't wear a cape. I can still see him and he's not
No,
wearing
no
any
capes.
capes.
No capes. I
No
learned that from
capes, no robot costume. Come on, Clay. What's
robot
going
costume
on?
would be amazing. I'll look into that.
Okay. So I'm joking, but the reason why I really wanted to connect with you is a very, very serious threat that is hitting a primary target that is right where most of our listenership falls. The FBI is warning parents, caregivers, and teens about increased sextortion crimes across the country. There are some people that have never even heard this word before, sextortion. So can we just start with a definition of what is it?
Yeah, so it is a kind of scam where the suspect gets it could be an adult as well, but in this case we're going to be talking about children to share some sexually explicit material with them. And usually they do that by, kind of coercing them, maybe making them think that they're also someone that age and they're exchanging, nude images back and forth, and it's all happening online, and it seems very free kind of thing. But once they have that image, then they have a couple of choices. The fastest growing part of this is asking for money. So they're extorting that person for money and saying, if you don't send me, $500 or whatever, I'm gonna share this image with everybody you know. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is asking for more child sex abuse material. So it'll be the same threat. I'll share this with everyone you know, unless you go online and make a video for me once a week for the rest of your life. And when kids are faced with this, they don't see a way out. We need to talk to our kids that there is a way out of this, but we're seeing this at epidemic levels. The FBI is right to warn parents about it, and I literally today got an email this morning from a parent saying, usually it's a cryptic email. I have a problem. I saw you a year ago at my kid's school. Can I talk to you? And so yeah, sure. And she called me up this morning, and her high school daughter broke up with her boyfriend, very sad and dejected and lonely. And she goes online looking for love and acceptance. She wants someone to say that she's lovely and special. And she met a person online who did that for her. And part of that was for her to share a nude image with him, which she did. And then came the extortion. So our kids are just super vulnerable. And this problem's not going to go away because many of the perpetrators are in other countries, not the United States, and we don't have a legal way of stopping them.
I, like you, hear from many different parents who have either been directly affected by sextortion or have, have a friend. And one of the things that I was really made aware of is there are lots and lots of families will say, oh, we talk to our kids about, not communicating with people they don't know online and all of these things. And one of the ways that I have found that is a tricky way that the perpetrators can kind of get into these inner circles is they will find, say, a school, a middle school in the area, and they will start friending people within that school. And what the kids are doing is they're using that kind of friending network, so to speak, as a vetting agent.
Mhm.
So that's how they'll look and they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't know this person, but they're friends with, A, B, C, and D, friend of mine. So I'm sure it's okay." And that's how, and I understand how it happens. I mean, I most likely would have done the same thing.
Yeah, this tactic that they're using, and you're 1,000,000% correct. They get into these networks, but also that's what makes their threat really devastating because they're friended in, and now they have that threat. Like I could just DM everybody you know with this
Yes.
image, and and then I'm talking to a parent and they're like, well, what do we do? I'm like, well, don't pay, number one, and number two, you need to block that person. But then they're like, well, what do we do with all the friends of my child who are connected with this person already? Like, how do we alert them? Like, do we tell them that my child was a victim, so my child doesn't want to like let anybody know that this happened to them because it's very embarrassing and personal? So like there's like what do we do? Like there's this person still connected to all these children at this school. We need to let these children know somehow. So it's complicated, and it's super underreported. And frankly, even when you do report it, there's not a whole lot that can be done if that person is doing this from, on the other side of the planet.
Sure, sure. I almost wonder if there's a way that you could, I don't know, screenshot the name and image of the account and send it to, say, a parent run account, of just recognize that this is a fraudulent account. This person is known to be dangerous to minors or
Mhm.
something along those lines. And
Yeah,
I
and you can flag the account to the hosting site, to Instagram or Snapchat, and say, yeah, this person's extorting me. So, I mean, they can't get those things taken out, but we're talking about a ring, right? It's not just one
sure.
person. Like there's entire warehouses of people literally in some country, and there's 40 or 50 people just banging out messages to kids around the clock. And so, yeah, once you shut down one account, then it's like Hydra. There's 50 in their place.
Well, thanks, Clay. I hadn't thought about that. this
It's
gets
grim.
this gets
It's really
worse
grim.
than I even realized.
Well, it's actually,
Okay.
Hillary, it's actually worse than that, because what what parents don't understand is, well, there's a lot we don't understand. Number one is, you got a great kid, you got a lovely child who in the real world would never do this. They would never share their personal information, let alone a nude image, with this person. They would never do that. But online, it's a totally different ball game. This thing that parents have, which is, I've talked to my kid about it. I had a parent call me, and she's like, Clay, she goes, just so you understand, she goes, my son, he's a high school, I think he's a senior at this time. She goes, my son sat in your presentation. You talked about this. You talked about sextortion. We talked about sextortion in our high school presentation. I went to your parent talk, and you talked to me about it. And we went home, and I talked to my son, and he and I looked each other in the eye, and he said to me, Mom, I would never do that in a million years. She goes, I found him in the fetal position crying in his room. She's like, this boy is like 6'3", 240. He's like going to be a D1 lacrosse player or whatever. He's going to get like a full scholarship. He's a stud. And she's like, I have my man child is crying on the floor because this person is saying, if you don't give me $1,000, I'm going to destroy your life. And it wasn't just like one message; it was message after message after and it was not just like, I'm destroy your life, but people are going to find out how gross you are and how dirty you are. Your mom and dad won't love you anymore. Your friends will leave you. Like it's this pressure and the shame that our children cannot bear this. And she goes, I now thought in a million years, number one, he would do this. Number two, that he wouldn't feel safe to come to me because we've talked
Yeah.
about this. He went to all his friends at school and tried to bum money off of them to pay the extorter. And he scraped together like $72. And he told this person, I'm a kid. I only have $72. And he's like, well, then you should kill yourself. That's
No,
what this
and
person
that's
said to
what's
him.
happening.
And
That's
that's
what's
what's happening.
happening.
She, after dealing with the situation, kind of de-escalating the whole thing with her son, she said, he told me if I hadn't helped him, if the mom hadn't found him, he told his mom, I think I might have taken my own life.
Oh my
So our
gosh.
kids do not have the emotional assets and the life experience to deal with this. No, I mean, they're going to make bad choices. Their little beautiful little prefrontal cortexes aren't great, but what do you do, right? We need to make resilient kids, because we can't just assume they're always going to make a good choice, because they won't. They need to know what to do if this
Right.
happens to them.
Right. And when we come back, let's talk more about some of those strategies for educating our kids about sextortion and what to do if it happens in your family. Did you know anyone in a U.S. state, territory, or tribe who needs suicide or mental health related crisis support, or who has a loved one in crisis, can connect with a trained counselor by calling or texting 988? 988 is the easy to remember number that reaches what is commonly referred to as the Lifeline, a network of more than 200 state and local call centers funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Formerly known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the full name has changed to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. 988. It's the 911 for mental health. I'm speaking with Clay Cranford, founder of Cyber Safety Cop, an organization whose mission is striving to create and promote safe schools, healthy children, and empowered families. So, one of the things that I think is so very tricky about talking about sextortion is we often don't even know, like, how do we start this conversation? Where do we begin? Do you have like topics or tips or anything about starting this conversation with our kids?
Yes, in fact, and I'll share the link with you, but maybe put in the show notes. But I do have a like parent handout, how to talk about this with your kid. But basically, number one, parents, like you have to accept that this could happen to your kid. So just, let's just like embrace that. I'm a parent of two boys who are now in college, but I was under no illusion like that there's no special force field around my home just because their dad's doing this work. It can happen to anyone. So once we're past that, the number two, you need to sit down with your kid and just have an honest conversation with them. And that honest conversation begins with, hey, like there's a lot of pressure out there. There's stuff that's going on. And you need to know that there are people that seem to be a nice person or someone your age, and they are looking to get you to compromise yourself, to send them an image that you'd be embarrassed about if someone else were to see it. And frankly, I don't think there's any point in mincing words. I think we need to talk to our kids, especially younger than maybe you think you need to. Um, and maybe with our younger kids, we should have a conversation about what kind of images do we share, period. Right.
Mm,
I'm sure every parent has had a conversation with their kid about, who can see your body, right? Like the parts of your body under your bathing suit. Like the only people who can see that are like mom and dad or the doctor, like you have that conversation.
mhm,
And then, but like we're talking about images now, like what, at a certain age, you might say you're not allowed to share an image of yourself with anyone without my express permission. But maybe at a certain age where you give them a phone and they can take images of themselves, we need to talk about what images are okay. You know, things that aren't, suggestive or sexually explicit or revealing. Those are things that we need to not share. But then we talk to, especially our teenagers who are dating, we need to talk about sexting. So nearly 20% of 18-year-olds have said, I sent a nude image to another person. So this is absolutely happening. Not everybody's doing it, but 20% is still a big number. And you need to talk about, sharing that image with another person that you share
mhm.
that image with a boyfriend or girlfriend. Um, I do this in my presentation to high schoolers and middle schoolers, and I usually get a big laugh from the kids because I ask them, whoever you're dating in high school, is that someone you're going to be with the rest of your life? And the answer is no. And, I'll have a gymnasium full of like 800 kids or something, and I'll say, hey, I don't want to ruin the romance, but it's not going to work out. Like whoever you're dating right now, y'all going to break up sooner or later. But you know what doesn't break up? That image.
Mhm.
And so if that image, and especially if those breakups aren't the best, could that person use that image or share that image, perhaps maybe to get back at you or maybe to humiliate you or just maybe just casually share it with somebody, then it gets out. The point is like that could, cause reputation consequences, et cetera. And I'll ask the students, I go, have you ever heard of this happening? And I'll have 800 heads bobbing up and down. Like, yeah, we know that happens.
Mhm.
So if we know that happens and we know this relationship is not going to last forever, does it make sense to share that image with somebody? And of course, sitting in that gymnasium looking at me with their peers, they're going to be like, absolutely not. That doesn't make sense at all. The problem is when they're online, right? When
Right.
there's no one else around and they're feeling that pressure, that's the problem, right? That's when those decisions are made. And then let's talk about sharing that image with a complete stranger. So I have two boys, and I sat down with my boys individually, and we talked about this. And the boys are more likely to be victims of the stranger sexting than girls, although girls are still victims. Girls are victimized by people they know, right? They're sharing that image with somebody they know in a relationship. But with boys, I'm like, look, I told my boys straight up, you know what? You meet someone online, they send you a nude image and they ask you to reciprocate. I go,
Mhm.
I just want to be really, really clear, man to man. Nobody wants to see a clinical close up of your business. Nobody wants to see that. And my boys are kind of laughing. They're like, okay, dad. I'm like, no, serious. If you do that, there's only one reason why someone would ask you for that, because they want to trap you. That's the trap. So you need to understand what the trap looks like. And then what happens next is this bombardment of horrible things. And they're going to try to convince you that if you were to tell me that I wouldn't love you anymore, and I go, I got to tell you something, there's nothing you can do that would stop me from loving you. And I go, in fact, I don't want you to go through something like this again by yourself. If you made a mistake and you did something that you're really embarrassed about, or you're just, you think you can't tell anyone, you can come tell me and I will help you. The second thing after that, I told my boys, if it was something you couldn't tell me, if you felt like I just can't tell my mom or dad, it's so bad, is there an adult maybe at your school that you could tell? Is there another adult in your life that you trust and respect, your coach, somebody that you could go to? If it wasn't me, is there another person? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, great. I go, you just have to tell someone. And we're never gonna pay these people. We're never gonna do that. And if we make a mistake, it can happen. You got to come and ask for help. So that's the resilient piece. We need kids to know that under the worst case scenario, that we're not going to take everything away. I told my boys, if you make a mistake, I'm not going to take your phone away if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I think, so often the phone gets used as the power play between parents and teens. And so, but in doing that, you're also putting your kid, because that is their social lifeline. And we all know that developmentally, kids at that stage, their social structures are more important than anything else. And I mean, that is their currency in which they are dealing. And if we're threatening to take that away, we are essentially putting them in a place where they can't help but lie to keep it. And so I understand what you're saying. Out of all of what you said, my two takeaways are: we have to explicitly set our kids up to expect to be told that your parents are going to desert you, which is, I mean, I can't think of a greater, and for you to preempt that by saying there's nothing anyone can do that, or there's nothing that you can do that will stop me from loving you. I think that is so powerful. And my second takeaway is clinical close up of your business. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
I've usually said a picture of your junk. So, I
Yeah.
like clinical close up.
Yeah.
But
I told my boys, I'm like, I don't care how attractive you think you are. Nobody wants to see that. So yeah, I mean, and the thing is that, that the screens just completely strip away any sense of consequence, right? You're not looking
yes.
at another human being. And so it just makes, and that's why, like, I have parents who look at their kid after something like this and they're like, I don't even know you.
I know.
How could you do this? And yeah, your parents, if you're that parent, you're in great company, because there's a lot of kids who've blown their parents' minds. We did when we were kids,
Mm-hmm.
but the stakes were very different, right?
Right.
And if you survived whatever horrible thing you did, then it was like a learning lesson, right? Like you drove too fast and you almost crashed and your parents found out about, whatever, like you borrowed the car when you shouldn't have, like those kinds of things, like we did when we were kids. But today kids are making choices online that have this like ongoing, relentless um impact.
Right.
And couple this with their mental health issues. So you have a kid who's struggling anxiety and depression. They're doing this partially to feel good about themselves, a lot of times, and then having this crushing, attack of their, personhood and their relationships, and it's too much. It's too much for
Mm-hmm.
most any kid, but yeah, like we said, it'll push kids over the edge. I was a keynote speaker at a Internet Crimes Against Children conference last fall, and one of the panelists that came up and spoke after me, she's from Northern California. Her son, great kid, um, shared a nude image with a stranger at 10 p.m. By 6 a.m. in the morning, he was gone. He took his own
Wow.
life. And when she was up there telling the story, I mean, I just remember my hair standing up on end. I just felt a little sick, my stomach, and we actually flew home together on an airplane after the conference. I was sitting chatting with her in the airport, and I go, "You described to me really the best case scenario. You had a kid who knew it was right and wrong. You had a great relationship with them. You talked about this, and it still happened.
Yeah.
What you didn't have was anything that would alert her if her kid was in trouble." So one other important piece is I highly recommend that you install an app on your child's phone that would alert you if they're getting sextorted.
Okay.
The one that I'm excited about actually is called Our Pact, OURPACT.
Okay.
And the cool thing about it, it actually uses iOS's device management system. So it's the same kind of management system that an employer would like activate on an employee's phone. So it has that kind of baked in with the operating system, but it does a couple interesting things. One is that it helps you easily regulate screen time in a way that's like super simple. In fact, the parent that talked to me today about her daughter, her she'd given her daughter access to Snapchat, which I don't recommend any parent ever giving their child Snapchat.
I agree.
Um, but she did, even after seeing my presentation. I'm very clear about this. She gave her child, access to a couple hours a day, and then she gave her more access, and that's how this relationship, this is how that connection happened, was through Snapchat. She goes, "Well, what do I do?" She goes, "Now that I deleted Snapchat, but she can re-download it anytime that she wants." So our pact will actually block that from being used on your child's phone, even after they've
Mm.
approved the downloads. So that's nice. Also, it takes screenshots of what your child's doing on their phone periodically, and then it runs it through a optical character recognition, and then if it sees words that are dangerous, then it'll send you a notification. So that's something you can do on an iPhone. Again, like your kid's gonna make mistakes. You just, as a parent, need to know. You need to be able to step in and intercede in a situation where your child maybe doesn't feel like they're in control.
Right, right. So you mentioned that this individual had reached um, via Snapchat.
Mhm.
Not surprising at all.
No.
We recommend a never hold on Snapchat. But how are perpetrators generally reaching kids? Is it direct messages through social media? Is it gaming? Is it texting direct? How are they getting to them?
The answer is yes. It's
Oh,
all those things. But the trajectory towards sending that image, it could be really easy. It could be really fast, right? It could
mm,
be, I've had kids who were friended somebody on Instagram and immediately get a DM with a nude image. Like
mhm,
boom, like send me, if you want more of me, send me one of you. And boys, and this kind of ties in with pornography actually. So I think part of this is uh, basically hacking a young man's mind, which is already kind of dopamine seeking
mhm.
for that kind of visual stimuli, right? Pornography. And basically saying, I'm going to provide some pornography for you, but all you need to do is to give me an image of you and we're good, right? Like and you don't know me, I don't know you, like what could go wrong? And that's kind of how they're thinking about it. So it could be really fast. You know, Other than that, I mean, it may take a day or two. It may not take that long because the boys are very impulsive. Again, they're pornographic image seeking, and so it's really now girls. It's going to take a little while longer because it's typically more relational type of thing happening here.
Mm.
So the private messages, the DMs, the texting, things that are away from other eyeballs are typically where this is happening. So they may meet somebody on Instagram or Snapchat, and then they request the all that stuff's happening where you can't see. If you're just following your child on Instagram, you don't see the DMs, right? You don't see
Right.
the private messages. My boys had Instagram. I had logged in as them on my phone so I could see their DMs. So
Mm-hmm.
there's some kind of ways around this, but when you have something that's sending and receiving self-destructing images like on Snapchat,
Mm-hmm.
like there's no way for you to manage that, mom and dad. You just don't know. And Snapchat also has this quick add, right, where you can quickly add followers, and these are people who are friends and friends of friends and farther out. So Snapchat is facilitating complete strangers into your child's life. And
Mm-hmm.
they're just constantly shoving that in your kid's face. And your child's like, well, if more people, more popular I am and all the things that are good about that, is a lie, frankly. And again, you can't turn that off. There's no parental control for that, except for
Right. And
deleting
it's
that
by
app from your phone
design.
by design.
It's by design. The parental control apps that are out there are not able to access those things within social media feeds. And I think that gets by a lot of people as well. So let's go to the deep dark place of it's happened. And let's just say our kid has done the right thing by letting us know. And I would imagine that the first thing you're going to say is to be calm. And I got to tell you, it's not,
Remain
it's
calm.
exactly, that is not my forte. So I have kind of like a self regulation question to ask because all of you first responder guys always have this like amazing gift of staying calm in the face of a storm. So what steps do you recommend that we do to stay
To remain calm.
calm? Yes.
Okay, so like this is a real thing. So it's your breath. All right. And
Okay.
um you can actually physiologically change your body just based on how you breathe. So if you were to hyperventilate, you'll feel anxious. So the point here is that you're going to slow down your breathing. You're going to breathe in through your nose, hold it for a moment, and then breathe it out slowly. And do that a few times, and you're going to feel better. Your blood pressure is going to drop down. Your heart rate's going to drop down. This is something that we do in law enforcement. When you're entering a situation that is chaotic and you need to remain calm, I consciously would be doing this. People in the military special forces, they do it too. So it does work. Um, and yeah, the promise before this happens is if you come to me, kiddo, I promise I'm not going to berate you and I'm not going to
Right.
flip out and I'm not going to judge you. So you have to be good to your promise. And so you do need to remain calm and you may cry. That's okay. You can't stop that, but you remain calm, and then next thing is you hug and thank your kid. Say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming to me. I love you, and touching them and holding them and hugging them like that for them like helps their anxiety because it releases dopamine in their brain and
Oxytocin, all the
oxytocin and all that.
bonding. Hmm.
Yes. So that's really, really important. If you're sitting far away from your kid when they're telling you this, they feel like they're on their own. So hug your kid, hold them for a moment, just tell them it's going to be okay. And then say, okay, just tell me what's going on. Just tell me. And I wouldn't be asking a ton of questions right away. So you're not interrogating them, although you want to get down to the nitty gritty. Maybe they have a really slow roundabout way of telling you things because my son drives me crazy when he tells me a story. I'm like, please, just what are we even doing here? Tell me what the story's about. So yeah, just remain calm, be patient, and then I think a really good question is, well, one, tell me we're gonna be okay. This is not the end. Like we'll be okay. And then ask them, what would you like to see happen here?
Mm,
Ask your kid
okay.
like what would be like for you the best outcome,
Okay.
and just let them kind of share with you like what they're thinking. I mean, I want your kid to feel like they're part of the solution, so they kind of get some power back because they feel completely, disassociated with any
Helpless.
power, helpless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then say, okay, well, we have some options, right? So number one, we're not gonna pay them. Like that's simple. If you give that person even an inkling that you will pay them, you will be bombarded. So just you. In fact, a lot of parents are like, they just message the person and say, like, look, I'm a parent. This is not happening. It's a numbers game. As soon as they realize you're not going to pay, they move on. Really, they
Okay.
don't have a lot of energy and time for someone who's a dry hole. They're just going to move on. So, and then you're like, okay, like we need to block this person. I would recommend you tell other people in that network that this person is a scammer and that they should block him too. I would also, if they actually do have an image, you can go to the National Center for Missing Exploited Children's website and use their tool called Take It Down,
Mm-hmm.
which it's basically the same technology that law enforcement's been using for taking down child sex abuse material, and they don't actually take the image, so you're not uploading an image to their tool. They take a fingerprint,
Mm.
a hash value of that image. It's like the metadata. It's not the image itself, and then they share that with some social media platforms like, I think, Instagram, Facebook, not Snapchat, some other ones. And then if that image appears on their platform, they'll just take it down. It'll just get automatically deleted. So there's kind of a thing you can do after the fact. And then then you can also report it to the National Center for Missing Exploited Children using their cyber tip line. They have a form that you can fill out, and then you could share it with your local law enforcement. But again, this is probably coming from a country on the other side of the planet. There have been successful prosecutions of the money mules. So these are the people who
Mm.
live in the United States who basically get the money and then
Mm-hmm.
they transfer the money overseas. So a lot of times they'll say, "Hey, I want you to buy $500 in these cash cards, like
Mm-hmm.
green dot cards or something like that." And then you give it to the money mule, and the money mule then wires the money to the people overseas.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes the money mule is somebody who's been a victim and they're being extorted to do
Oh,
it.
and that's how they're being extorted.
You
Sure.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask the cyber safety cop for his healthy screen habit. Did you know that Healthy Screen Habits does workshops? For 2 days, we can come and guide students through an exploration of their own tech use and facilitate a research based presentation bespoke to their own questions. 87.5% of the teens who participated in this workshop recorded a change in their tech use following participation. For more information, contact us at info@healthyscreenhabits.org. My guest today is Clay Cranford, the cyber safety cop and dad of two. Clay, when I picture you giving presentations at school, I can only picture the kids picture book by Peggy Rathman. Are you familiar with it? Officer Buckle and Gloria. It's a
no,
story
I don't
about,
know that one.
oh my gosh, I love it. It's a story about a police officer and his canine partner and the safety assemblies they do at school. And I highly recommend it. The illustrations
Mm.
are very funny.
All
It's a
right.
very good. I'm a fan of picture books. On every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask for a healthy screen habit, which is a tip or takeaway that our listeners can put into place nearly immediately. What is yours?
Do I give you one or more than one?
You gave me three.
I know I gave you three. I got like 20, but yes.
I know.
So,
Yeah. So do it.
well, I would recommend that my one of my number one things is I tell parents to wait. Don't give your child a phone or social media too soon. Um, I feel like we're doing that because we're anxious parents and not because our kids actually need it. Um, Number two, I would say, I wouldn't don't give my child a smartphone until they're in high school. If you need to give your child a phone before that, give them a flip phone, give them an Apple Watch, something that you can communicate with them, but doesn't have access to social media apps. And then I would wait till they're 16 to give them social media. And at least that gives them, time getting through puberty without being on a stage on social media is actually really, really good for them. And the opposite would be is horrifying, right? So I do recommend that wait as long as you can, and and then also be very careful about what apps you say yes to. So like we said, I would never say yes to Snapchat, not in a million years. And but if you say yes to an app, then you need to have a game plan on how you're going to monitor that. And I think our pact is a great choice. I have some other tips in my book, Parenting the Digital World, but also on my website at cybersafetycop.com. So take a look at that. And, there's always something new. So, I mean, that's the kind of it's a good thing for us as educators because it always keeps us kind of interested and we always have some new material, right? But for parents, it's really frustrating. Visit my website. I have a blog every other week about something important for you. So take a look at that. You can join my free membership. And other than that, happy parenting.
It's quite an adventure.
It is indeed.
As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show and a link to all of the resources discussed, including links to Cyber Safety Cop's website, by visiting the show notes for this episode. You do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and scroll to find this episode. Clay, thank you so much for being here, but especially for a life spent in service of others, protecting our kids both on and offline.
Thank you, Hillary. It's really been a blessing having that career, and I'm glad I can continue doing it. And thanks for having me on.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.